Okay, this is a follow-up video on the coolant leak from the heater core on the 08 XC 93.2. And yeah, look at this mess. All right, so this amp is under the seat. This fills up with coolant leaking from the heater core. And basically, my girlfriend tells me the stereo stopped working, and I was trying to diagnose this, took it up to Volvo after I discovered that there's a part that sits beneath the amp down on the floor here, and it's actually under the amp. This amp sits on the metal frame, and that's not what gets wet. I found out that this is called a Bluetooth relay. This thing was soaked. And, you know, I wasn't really ready to start doing a bunch of electrical testing and digging into the speakers, but I had replaced the ICM, which is Volvo speak for a friggin' stereo, and I swapped out the amp just to be sure. But when I had discovered the coolant leak, that's when I realized that the Bluetooth relay was soaked in coolant. So I went up to Volvo, told them my plight, tried to figure out what the part was called, and eventually figured everything out in terms of replacing the parts. But what has happened is that with time, and when the sun came out here in Seattle, aka San Diego, no more rain, the car got nice and warm, and I had the plugins all disconnected and the module inside in the warm temperatures, so it dried out. And this thing had like crackling on one speaker, this front right, for whatever reason, and nothing else had sound out of it. There was no parking assist audible with the chime, and there was zero sound on the remainder of the speakers. But what was weird was that you could hear like a light crackling even when the car was off. What the fuck, right? So how would you ever even diagnose this? I am sure a stereo shop would be throwing parts at it. So after everything dried out, I drove up to Volvo, told them everything, and nothing worked at that point in time. That was earlier today. And for some reason on the way home, after I reassembled it and drove the vehicle home, I heard like full volume crackling on the speakers. So that told me that the speakers weren't bad. Just caveman diagnosis, no tools, just common sense. So I started to figure, well, if I'm getting a signal, that means the signal wire is good. And there's another topic I wanted to touch on. The code that was thrown that they pulled at Volvo when I was clearing some other codes non-related came up as AUD-0002 through 5, which is all 2, 3, 4, and 5, 4 different speakers. And it said no signal to speaker box. And they said the causes would be a open circuit, not a short, an open circuit on the signal wire between the ICM, which is the stereo, to the speakers, or internally within the speakers themselves. So it's got you chasing a short, which doesn't make sense, because if there's water in the connector, well, it had you chase an open circuit, which is different than a short, because a short is a power wire hitting a ground, I'm pretty sure. And an open circuit means a cut wire or an internal open circuit within the speaker. So the actual code has you chasing things that were not even related to the Bluetooth relay. So now after all that and all this analyzing and digging into this and changing out these hard parts, simply having the Bluetooth relay disconnected for a couple of nice warm days, and I don't know the rhyme or reason of why it worked after I came from the dealer. It was just chance. I plugged it in, heard the crackle, got back home, and then I had unplugged it again, replugged it back in, and lo and behold, the stereo works. But there is still some kind of connectivity problem between the plugs themselves here and the relay, or there's an internal water damage problem with the relay, because when I turn the vehicle back on a second time to diagnose the or listen to the stereo work again, it had cut in and out, and when I tapped it on the frame, it went from not working again to working perfectly. So there's a problem with the connection. I need to either put some dielectric grease or continue to dry it out, or just replace the part. That's the end result of all this. Thanks, Volvo.